and to try to use this development to transfer it into the technical competencies. I've noticed and seen through the years and working with kids, and I'm sure Davor can ask, and you guys can ask to that, is that working with kids, most of the time when they learn the information, when they understand the information, it stays with them. When we have to impose, when we have to make corrections, that's when it's starting to be more difficult. And what I've been doing through that process is realizing that the environment I was creating for them with different exercises, different tools in regards of the physical, and transferring that to the technical ability that I wanted to develop with them, that was kind of making them progress so much faster. So that's what I'm going to share with you today on those two things. Now, why is physical development important? We are in a sport where we have an open sport, as we call. We have information that comes in, we need to hit the ball and work on projection. And the reality is there's a lot of things that the kids need to do. And if they're not good in their physical abilities, it's going to be tough to do a lot of the technical work. Today, most of you know, in all sports, it's very difficult because we all have the same vision that the kids need to do a lot of sports when they're young. Why? Because they need to develop their general abilities as individual physically to be able to run, catch, throw. And unfortunately, we find ourselves in situations where we see 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds doing our sport 10, 15, 20 hours a week. So what I'm going to share with you is some of the development skills that coaches are doing, and that's also a philosophy that we have, that if we're able to do those physical development in a warm-up setup when they're on court, we have a better chance to give those tools to the kids. We still need to continue to make sure that they do other sports when they're young, but if they don't, we have a possibility to do it on our own environment. Part of that is really making sure that we touch base on agility, balance, speed, and coordination. I've seen a lot of video that Davor is putting on his Instagram and YouTube and everywhere and share with us. And most of the time, if you want to throw the racket towards the serve, if you want to hit a good forehand, if you're not coordinated, it's going to be very difficult to do. The second thing that is important in regards of the physical development is to diversify the training environment. Sometimes we stay too much with one exercise, and then the kids, what they do is they get used to it. And the more you diversify, the easier it is for them when there's a change in their environment to really make sure that they have success in what they need to achieve. And lastly, just be creative. Because the reality is, I'm going to show you exercises. I hope it's going to touch on a base onto what you would like to do with the kids. Try it with them. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of things you can do with one exercise. So be creative. There's no right and wrong. It's just making sure that you're able to touch those different aspects into developing those abilities that they need to do to be a better tennis player. So I'm going to show you a little video, and you'll see, and what I wanted to do with this is showing you the situation in a group environment, in a club environment. That's pretty much what we all do when we're back home and training. So the thing that I'm saying to the coaches when I visit them, when I go and see them, it's use those warm-up time, not to just run around the court, not to just, do some stretches. It's great because you give them a sense of autonomy. But what is good also is to use that time in a group setting, working in different exercises, coordination exercise that will be fun, that you can diversify, and making sure that you can use also into your own backyard and into your own session. So I'm going to start the video, and then you can see a bit of that. And as you can see, you can have a lot of kids on court, you know. The main thing is what is to be organized, to planify. You need to plan. You need to plan. This is, you know, where the kids want to be doing stuff with us on court because it's fun, because they enjoy what they do.
Oh.
And sometimes even little things like that, we think it's easy for us, but it's not easy for the kids. So most of the different videos that we've shown, and I don't know if you saw it, but it's really based on stations. That's something that we see that is working a lot, is either having, when you have small groups, having those groups doing different progressions or different activities. But what is working, and I try it back home, I was able to have about 20 to 30 kids at the same time. And the only thing I did is what I did on one side of the court, I mirrored on the other side. Now, what's not easy to do, and that's where our job as coaches is important, is we need to plan. We need to structure ourselves. You don't need a lot of equipment. If you have the ladders, if you have the cones, if you have different lines, if you have basketball, soccer ball, handball, that's great. If you don't, it's still okay. But again, if you want to be successful in that, plan ahead of time. Now, what I'm sharing to the coaches that I see around the country is, you know what, if you have a session of an hour and a half, you would do anyway around 15 minutes of warm up. So you use that 15 minutes, use 20 minutes. If you do a private session, do 15 minutes still, even if you have an hour. Now, this should be never another perhaps webinar, but coaches, I hear the coaches now saying, but Sev, I know what you're saying, but what about the parents? What about the parents that will come to us and say, hey, I didn't pay the session to be a physical session. I paid for the session to be tennis. I don't want them to lose their time. And in a way, I understand why they're saying that. So we need as coaches to be convinced that this is very important, because the reality is if they're better athletes and better in their skills, they're going to be better tennis players. And what the parents should know is that they're going to be better tennis players probably faster. And I think when you say that, then that's when the parents are like, okay, then I'm going to have full confidence in you. So again, I hope that kind of development and physical skills is something that you guys will take and share back home. Now, the second video, and that was a purpose of the presentation, is to transfer the physical abilities to the technical development. Again, we all went the same way. We went with the kids on court and we talked about, let's work on the impact. Let's work on the fundamentals. Let's work on the technique. Yes, but I think there's ways that we can do that with making sure that the kids are developing the abilities without just doing the technique. So I hope you'll see in those videos, and we're going to look at it very quickly. But you'll see in the videos that the intent is trying to work on one or two things. I'm not going to say what it is. And hopefully by the end of the video, you will see the link that I put on into the different exercises. So let me start that video and we'll have a little conversation after. And again, hopefully at this point, you will see with this exercise and the next one, the link that I'm trying to make with the previous exercises into what's coming the next few videos. And also, as you can see, I'm always trying to show different ages, because we have a wrong perception that if the older kids are doing it, the younger kids are not good enough. I think it's the opposite. We need to do a lot of things when they're younger and trying to have them doing it as they progress. So I'm going to go back to the beginning of this video. Okay. So first of all, this exercise, and I hope that as you're looking at the video, you've seen that I've worked with different exercises to, in a way, transfer the ability of the open stand and of making sure that the legs for the volley was just a reaction with the ball, with the volleys. And here is putting, why are the cones are there? The cones are there because I'm just, and I didn't say anything, is I want to reinforce the fact that the kids need to recover. They need to recover behind the line. Most of them are closed, are in, are too close to the line. And unfortunately, they're just reacting to the ball instead of really making the distance to go to the ball. And also, the intent is, as you can see, even if it's not perfect, there's little things that coordination is not there. Is trying to transfer without saying anything from the foot back forward and trying to create that with that space, she's able to have the proper footwork. Now, here, what, and that's where I should have Davor experience on the videos. And as you can see, I should have put a different ways of doing those videos. But in this one, the intent was to have different cones, and I'm asking my player to step over the cone before she does her stroke. And again, just by doing that, you see here, just by doing that is forcing her to really having that step out, that unit turn that some of us call before she hits. And I have to tell you that I've been doing this little exercise, five minutes per training. And in about 2 weeks, the way she moves and position herself is so much better. And without me training it. So that's an ability that you can take not just from the volleys, but you can take from the baseline also. Here, that's an easy one, but it's something we're not doing a lot. By asking the kids to open their foot and ask to hit the ball with the inside of the foot, it's creating the same thing. It's creating the aspect where they need to dissociate their leg from their upper body. And also what I added to the exercise is when the ball is hit with the foot of one, the other person is doing a split step. So the split step is even included into that exercise. So you have the split, you have the footwork, you have the balance, and you have what is important, the dissociation of the upper and lower body. And here you can see that the kids are doing it. And even by doing it a few times, I can promise you it's not easy to do. Sometimes they have no rhythm. They cannot time themselves for the foot to be open. And I can tell you that I've done this exercise with a 5-year-old. I've done it with 6 years old, 10-year-old. What I did to change it and make it more successful when they were younger is having a different ball. So this is a soccer ball. Sometimes you can take a bigger plastic ball where they can play on the beach. You can do different things. But again, it's something you can do at any ages. Here, the intent on the volley is that it's a link of two things. It's the technical and it's the footwork. The kids, when they volley, what is the number one thing we're all saying? Have the right grip. And have the right grip, sometimes it's a continental and they turn and they go to their forehand and they have difficulties hitting it. And I realized by putting the kids lower than the net and making them feel that they're doing that little kind of slice movement without saying that's what it was, their grip changed automatically. And by doing that on both ends, forehand and backhand, and this is forehand only, they were able to sense and feel that kind of hitting, following through, and with the right grip. And that's why I've been doing that and being very successful in regards of maintaining that forehand grip with those kids. And then the aspect of doing that is, as you can see, the open, whoops, sorry about that. But the fact that he opens his foot and transferring, it's the same ability as what you've seen earlier. Most of the time when I do a transfer and I do something that is new, I like to be on the same side of the players for different reasons. One is so much easier to communicate. You don't have to yell, you don't have to scream if you're outside and you have people playing and yelling and screaming and you're close to a park. Then it's a better way to communicate and not scream to the player. The other reason why I'm there is because what I'm giving the player is so much easier. There's less speed, it's hand feed, and then with that, they're able to have the volume to adjust and progress. And lastly, when we went to that, I went to 2 other kids under 10 players, and the intent was to do the same thing with them. I did a little progression with them prior to that, and that's the end result. Again, not perfect. Do they have the right grip? Are they following through? No, but the intent is not that. The intent is, are they able to have a strong way of moving to the ball and have proper footwork? So, as I've discussed in the beginning, I know it's a lot of information in a quick period of time. I didn't want to overwhelm all of you with a lot of videos, information, technical, and all of that. But I did want to show you that I took one situation, and that was making sure that they have that sense of opening their foot, transferring the body, using the dissociation, but to do it in a way that goes beyond just the technique and just the feeding aspect. I hope I was able to do that with you guys. Davor, I don't know if people in the chat or now are ready to perhaps have some questions in regards of what we just shown today.
Yeah, let's yeah. So guys, feel free, to ask anything you would like to ask. And yeah, we have here Alexandra de Guzman. What do you encourage students to do when they just play outside in the winter? Like, what can they do at home?
Listen, it's going to be, your question is so important and so interesting. If you asked me the question, you would have asked me that 5 years ago. I would answer, if you're playing outside, go play soccer, play a different sport, go play basketball. All of this is good. But I'm at a stage where my answer now is go play outside, because kids are not doing that anymore. I remember I'm always going to and unfortunately we couldn't do this year, but we go to the Little Mo, for example, in Florida, and we're coming from Montreal. We go there in December. Normally it's snow, it's cold, so kids are outside. And I remember having a group of kids and there was a playground and the kids are like, Sev, can we go and play? And I was like, yeah, not a problem, just go. And the coaches were like, oh my God, we're in Florida, they're gonna break something. I'm like, no, but if they break something, they break something, but let them play. And they were amazed to see the kids in like 2 hours making their own games, building teams on their own. And I think we need to do that a bit more. So my answer to you today is really making sure that they play outside, they have an unstructured environment, because that's another thing that is important, not having someone saying, oh, you have to do this, you have to do that, hit in front, move your feet, make sure you're there. So that would be my answer for that.
I like that. Bill Phillips, my good friend Bill Phillips.
Hi, Bill.
He said importance of holding a racket during the athletic skill development activities. So what's your take?
I think it is important. I do think, again, for me, it's holding the racket. It's part of the progression. I think sometimes with the little kids, they have more difficulties with the coordination skills with catching and throwing. So I would do with them the catch and throw without the racket. I would then bring the racket in to do different exercise. The example, Bill, of the young girl with the racket doing the step out over the cones, I've done without the racket, I've done with the racket. And the third progression with that is, as she was moving in, I was feeding little balls so she can hit. So for me, the racket, so important. We're in a sport, but we run with it. We cannot put it on the floor and then take it when we're at the ball. But at the same time, I would use it as a progression. If the kids do not have success, to take it out and then to bring it in when they do.
All right, Emma, when would you suggest kids transfer to focus only on tennis and not doing other sports? At what age the focus should be just on tennis?
Great question. I think it depends on the goal of the kid and the family. I think it depends on the capacity of the development of the kids versus the competitive aspect of the player. I would say that we have a lot of players now that seems to be playing a lot when they're 7 and 6 years old, because the parents are playing, because that's the only time they have. I think we need to look at more the volume of what they do. And sometimes if they do just tennis at 7 and 8 years old, the reality is when we look at everyone playing tennis at a higher level, that's what they did when they were younger. And we don't want to take that and copy it. So I would say 10, 11 years old would be the best time to transfer and go to tennis. The challenge is, I'm saying that to you, but I know that around the world, we have a competitive structure where the kids play every weekend. So it's very difficult to do 2 sports, to do something else. So I would say to that would be my answer around 10, 11 years old. Now, our reality as coaches, kids gonna play very young, probably 7, 8 years old, and do only tennis. If that's the case, just make sure that you look at volume, you look at intensity, you manage the competitive structures so they're not getting burned, and you try to incorporate other things in their tennis environment. And I think if we do that, then it's going to be much easier to try to develop our kids than to try to change something that seems to be inevitable and the kids playing only one sport at a younger age.
Like that. Mars is asking, what drill do you suggest for a kid that cannot estimate the distance to the ball and gets too close or too far from the ball? Yeah,
Maz, great question. I've been working and talking to coaches about 2 things in the past, I would say, few years, and it's space and time. Space in regards of the distance of the ball. If you don't have a lot of volume, it's very difficult for those kids to anticipate the bounce of the ball and to have that time to hit. The previous exercise with one of the young girl and having the square was to create that space and making sure they understand to come in. So that's one exercise. I would share with you that one exercise that I've done recently with some of the younger kids is that I've been asking them to catch the ball at different time of the bounce. So I would go from 4 bounces, let's say 3 bounces to 2 bounce to 1 bounce to no bounce. And it seems like by doing that, so I'm bouncing the ball on the floor and I'm asking the player, catch it after 3 bounces. And then they back up, they back up, they back up. And then I say, okay, now catch it after 2 bounces. But I'm not going faster or higher. I'm trying to keep the same speed, same height. And then they try to catch after 2 bounces. And then I'm like, okay, now catch it after 1 bounce. And they realize that they're coming closer and closer and closer. And then when I ask them, when do you feel you have more time? It's like, oh, when I catch the second bounce, I'm positioning myself more. And I'm like, okay, so that's what you probably need to do now. Position yourself between the first and second bounce and try to see if you have space to go hit the ball. So I would recommend you to try that with some of I'm going to say younger kids, but you would be surprised to see if the older one, the 12 and 13, are able to do it.
I like that one too. I never thought about that. I'm going to implement that one as well, because that's one of the biggest things, you know, with the kids, they're struggling with that. I like that. Severine. Martin Roca, our friend Davor, please ask Sevi to talk about her take on sessions where kids are serving a lot of balls in the last 10 minutes of the training.
Martin, so happy you're here. Thanks for joining us. Great question. This is a good one because we are all the same. We're coming in, we're doing our session, we're all planned, we're all booked, and then poof, oh my God, we need to serve. One thing that I've changed is I'm serving at different time of my training now. I'm saying that, and even when I go to clubs, if I know it's a priority, if I know I'm working on something that the serve is involved, I'm going to do either mid-training, even sometimes I'm going to begin with it. I think with serve, even at the younger age, the main thing is they need to have an intention. I think there's nothing worse than just serving to serve. They need to serve with a purpose, either because we're working on toss. I know, Davor, one of your last, I think, video was with the clock. I love that with the toss. There needs to be something like that. Work on the projection. Everything starts with what and the tactics. So I do think that we need to have a variation of when we do the serve and make sure that you have an intention when you serve, because again, there's nothing worse than just hitting balls to hit balls and then to say, oh, great serve, and then the kids are hitting 20 balls down the net.
Yeah.
So I don't know, Martin, if I answer your question, but thank you.
No, definitely. Yeah. And then what I think too with the serve, so important that the recovery, you know, like too many kids, you know, they stand there and serve, and then once they get older and, you know, the return comes a little bit faster back, and they just practice the serve, always just, you know, standing there and hitting it. So that's another thing I think very important. Emma asked, how many tournaments would you recommend a year for a kid that's between 8 and 10?
Wow, that's a good question. Honestly, I would say it depends on what's the goal of the player. You know, you have some under 10 kids that are trying to qualify for array and that are trying to qualify for nationals. And in each of our country, we have a process where they need to do nationals and then go do the provincials, and then they have to qualify for certain events. So I think it's different for everyone, but first it depends of the goal. The thing that I will look for though in the younger kids, I would say under 12, is the kind of event they play. I know that in the States, we don't have that. We have that a little bit in Canada also. Kids at under 10 cannot play up. But when they do play up, I feel sometimes most of them do not have the physical and technical capacity to play at a higher level. So that's what I would do first. Do they play under 10 events? Do they play under 12? I see some under 10 playing under 14. Even if they have more volume, the physical capacity of both players is so different. There's a chance of injury, so we have to be careful. But again, if they're able to play around 10 tournaments per year, let's say that will be the goal, and to play in their own category, I think it would be a great start. But again, evaluate first, what's the goal, what's the purpose behind it, and make sure you look at the volume. There's nothing worse if you have a number in mind and they play every weekend and they don't recover after. It's not worth it. So look at that volume in relation to the number of tournaments.
Severine, I have a question as well. Like when you had like, you know, Bianca and all the great Canadian player, Felix, did you work with them when they were like 8, 9 years old, 10 years old? Like, what was the age you were like involved a little bit in the development?
Yeah, for me, again, for the past 8, 9 years, I've been involved with the under 10, and what it means is I've been around those Felix, Nikas, Bianca, Dennis, and you know, when they were younger, you could sense that they had something. You can sense, and when we say they had something, is the love of the game, is the fact that they were on court, they were able to, they were very good competitors. It was just not you know, on the abilities of it, because there's so much that influences success after that. And then we had them in our camps. That's something that we've been doing and regrouping them, and from there they grew. So I would say that you know, what is not easy if you take someone like Felix is pathway to competition is an exception. Doing what he did at 14 and then going on challengers at 15 and being on the tour really early, you don't want to copy that because it's his own pathway. But if you look at Bianca and Dennis, when they were younger, they kept playing their categories. I would say in the girls, though, they play one category up a bit quicker than the boys. And that's no different for someone like Bianca, for example, where she played our national at 12, and then she played at 14 and Petits As. So that's the age where you have to balance the need of challenging them in their competition and the tournament that you select.
Love that. And yeah, always interesting to hear, you know, when someone was involved in the development of such great players, you know, getting a little bit inside there. Mas is asking Severine, do you see many kids with one-handed backhand in under 8-year-olds? And do you think it is fine to let them do one-handed if they insist, if they are 7 years old or not?
Great question. I'm seeing more one and backhand. And I think the reason for that is progressive tennis, is the ball, because they have so much more time. They want to hit so much, you're freer with it. I would say it depends. If I have a kid that is 7 years old and is physically unable to coordinate themselves, forget about the technique and having the wrong or the right grip, I would do both and see where he looks more comfortable. But at a younger age, if they have the minimum and they're able to position themselves and hit the ball, why not? I think you have a good challenge ahead of you if that happens, because you don't want to let the kid, and where you're going to be able to see if the one and backhand is really good for the kid, I think it's when they transition. So if they're 7 and they hit with the you know, the orange ball and they have a lot of time and they're great, and then they move at the baseline and they start doing green dot, perhaps when they're 8, and then it goes all over the place, make the change right away, because as you all know, what you do technically for a one-hand backhand to a two-hand backhand is very different. And when they change physically, it's also important. So I will let them, again, do it if they have the minimum of the physical abilities to it, but make sure you have an eye on it, because when they do transfer from court to court, and mostly when the yellow ball comes in and they're unable to hit, you have to make the transition to the two hands very quickly.
All right, guys, you can still write things in the chat. Severine, I have another question. When you travel a little bit around, like right now with the COVID, not as good, obviously, but when we didn't have all that and you go to clubs, what do you think about programs in general? Not just, you know, talking good or bad about something, just in general, you know, like an objective opinion. Do you see some patterns where you think that might be, like could be better or not, and as we know, it's your opinion, and that yeah, just give us a little bit insight, maybe if there are some patterns you see in junior programs or in 10 and under, what you would maybe structure a little bit different.
Yeah, listen, I'm fortunate to be able to work with great coaches and that really have a sense of trying to do the best that they can in their environment. One thing that I've seen, and it's just because the structure is so difficult sometimes, is the challenge of having the right kids with the right ball. That's, and again, that's, I think, everywhere. That's from here to any part of the world. When you have a kid that is should be playing with, let's say, the orange ball because they're 8 years old, they're there in their development, and then the only thing you have in your club is 11, 12 years old, then you have no choice to have this kid with the yellow ball in their program. So that's a challenge for a lot of clubs, a lot of programs that don't have a volume of kids to have the kids in the proper ball. The second thing that I would say, it's something that we improve so much because it's a value that is important, is the warm up. How do kids warm up when they're in their group session? And I have to say that 6 years ago, when I went there and talking about the different stations and doing different exercises, now coaches are getting on board with that. It's so much better. Can it be better? For sure. I think sometimes we do exercises just to check a box, but I think we need to have exercises with connection to something. That's what I'm saying to the coaches. You want to do the ladder, great, but why do you do the ladder? Is there a link to your exercise to what you want to do? And the third thing I would say is, one thing that we improved a lot is match play outside of tournaments. I think it's great for the kids to play without the intent of competition, because for me, competition and results are two different things. I think we're seeing the kids now missing competition, not as much as missing the ranking and the points and all of that, but the kids are playing more points in their own environment. And one thing that we have to do better on that is they need to have still a purpose. If it's just playing 2 hours of tennis without a purpose, without working on tactical intention, I think it's something that we have to do a better job. So I would say that's the three main thing that I've been seeing and talking about and having discussion with the coaches for the past 3-4 years.
And then before I go to the other two questions, Sevi, like tennis, our sport is, different than others. Like soccer, you throw a ball out and the kids can run around, right, and kick it. So I feel like we have a big challenge to maintain the kids happy and playing tennis, right? So that's why tennis is so hard. You can't just take the racket and start to rally 100 times back and forth. Is there anything you do or you like to do with the kids if you have a bigger group? Do you do like things that are fun for them, like relay races, or like any things special, to keep the interest like high?
Yeah, environment is everything. And the person that runs the environment is us coaches. So anytime we do something, it needs to be fun. It needs to be in a group environment. One thing that I hope we're going to change in our sport is when I hear that we're an individual sport. We are an individual competitive sport, but we're not in an individual setting. We have to do more little team competition. Last time I did something when I was in Vancouver, we had 2 teams. We had different, we kept 2 hours because it was a camp. And in the 2 hours, we created 2 teams, and the teams had to bring points to their own team. So to have that sense of working together, to have that sense of team, of working in an environment that is just myself. So I have to say that in most of the settings that I'm doing and what I'm with the coaches, I'm trying to aim for that more and more, because the kids find it so much more. They can be competitive, they can lose and still win. So I think it's a win-win for everyone by doing that.
I I love that. Cassia is asking, is it beneficial to focus one developing forehand or backhand only, especially for 10, 11-year-olds?
So two answers. One, and that it's a philosophy that I want to share with you guys, and we have, there's two different philosophy in that. But my philosophy with developing kids, we need to develop kids in all around the court. And one thing I remember, even when I started coaching, I was hearing a lot, oh, the girls cannot volley. Like, oh my God, and I don't know why, it's stuck with me. And I'm always on court when I'm teaching or coaching a young girl. I'm like, okay, we're going to do volleys, because I'm like, it has to change. That perception has to change. So I do think that the kids, when they're young, they have a personality, they have a style, they want to copy a player. I think it's great. I've been seeing a lot of Denis Shapovalov, throw between the legs before they serve. I think it's cute. I think it's showing how important those guys are to us, and good role models. But at the same time, I think they have to play everywhere. So at a point of 14 or perhaps 13, when they find their way as who they are as players, then they can identify what are their strengths and things that they need to work on. So my recommendation, my first answer, is making sure that you work on all the shots. If you're able to do that in your session, make sure you work on serve, forehand, backhand, things at the net, overheads, and even if they're not good or they can't do it, just do it. Then after that, what I would like to answer on that is that it's important to have an intention. That's something we're missing sometimes. Sometimes I go to clubs and I ask the coaches, why are you working on the setup, or why are you working on fundamentals? Oh, because it's important. Okay, that's not an answer. You should answer, okay, I want to work on the forehand in the next four months because my player needs a weapon. But that doesn't mean you're not going to work on anything else. So I would say that whatever you work on, work with an intention, work with a purpose, make sure that there's a tactical before you work on the technical. And that would be my two answers for Cassia on that question.
Love that. Mas is asking again, as you go and see so many kids, is there any teachings that some coaches may be doing and create injury in kids and we should be aware of and stop doing in serve and forehand especially? So do you see something that, when you traveled, that might cause
Yeah,
injuries in
you know
serve?
what? I think great question. Two things again. First, the wrong ball. Sometimes the kids, even if they're ready technically, they're so small physically, and we have them with the yellow ball too quick, and then injury comes very, very quickly. The second thing, and it's volume and repetition. Sometimes parents don't understand that if they take their kid to go and do some baskets, I think it's great. It creates a great relationship. They're helping us to do volume. But if they do 2 hours of serve and then they come back and they do their training and we do another 30 minutes on serve, it's too much. And that's one thing that I remember I read in baseball. In baseball, I was wondering why the coaches behind the thrower, you have the catcher and the thrower, that was having a time, like a time thing, counting the throw. And I'm like, what is he doing? And they do have in that sport the number of throw that they should have, to not get injured. And even someone was telling me that that's why sometimes they switch the person in a match or in a game, because they achieve their maximum throw. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. We don't have that in tennis. So we have to use our common sense. So the common sense is, yes, they need to work on stuff. Make sure that you look at volume. Make sure you look at the structure that the kid has. And sometimes too much it's not better. And I always say quantity versus quality, quality versus quantity always, always, always should prevail.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I'd rather have the kid serving 10 times 100% correct than 200 times, just standing there and hitting it. Love the idea of teamwork with kids. Many good ideas. Thank you, Severine. Loved it. yeah, we're coming slowly to the end. If you have some questions, yeah, Severine, yeah, I love everything you do. And you know, Tennis House, we have tennis conferences, and if COVID goes hopefully soon away, I want to host my fourth one. You know, I had Emilio Arancha coming down here, Douglas Cordero, so many, you know, like coaches we had. And if you would be interested one day, I would love to have you as well here in Louisiana to do maybe like in the conference and maybe separately like a weekend for all the coaches we have here in the South to educate a little bit as well in 10 and under. Mike is quite often down here, Mike Barrow, you know, and
Yes.
Canada is not too far away to fly you over here. So I would love to have you if you would be ever interested when everything gets to normalize, you know.
For sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. I will be happy to come and see you live. That's something which seems to be missing with all of this. But again, with everyone and the questions and everyone being in this webinar, it shows that we have one interest in common. It is the sharing aspect and being with the kids and making sure that we're trying to share those information. And yes, Wayne is still doing some stuff, Bill, and still in BC and Vancouver, and he's doing well. He's working still in his club, and I saw him in September when I went there. So always someone that I love and enjoy sharing stuff with at Tennis Canada.
Nice, nice. All right. So for everybody, this is yeah, I recorded it, and this I will put it on our. Severine has obviously. I'm going to send her the recording, and then for all the other guys, it's going to be on my YouTube channel on Tennis House because that's the best place to have those longer videos. And everybody who signed up today, like I will send always out to, I have an email list now with all the seminars, and I'll send all the info, everything that Severine wants to send me as well. I'll share with you guys and with the other guys that sign up for all the other presentations we have with Mike Barrow, with Alistair McCall and all the other great guys. So yeah, so I had a blast. Thank you, Severine, so much for doing it. The feedback is amazing. You know, like Martin said, always great to see you, Sevi. Thanks. Thank you so much. A lot of yeah, I thought so too. It was amazing. I'm working on the next webinar, Sevi. If when everything gets back to normal, I have you come down here. That would be amazing. You know, as I told you earlier, Bill Phillips, before we started, you know, he's involved since so many decades, and especially in always promoting, you know, the kids tennis, and put so much effort and love in it. So maybe doing something with him and the USTA, and you know. There are always ways to get things better. So thank you, Severine.
Thank you, Davor. Thank you for everyone. Thank you for everything you're doing also. It's amazing. Thank you. Hi to everyone. And Martin, can't wait to talk to you soon.
Thank you, guys. All right. Thanks, Sevi, again.
Bye. Thank you.